Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Going to talk a little recruiting, a lot of activity for Texas leading up to the Georgia game, and we'll break it all down here in this video. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our friends over at Von Lane. From Texas football Saturdays to NFL Sundays and everything in between, the fall in Austin is stacked, and Von Lane is the smart way to get there. Forget those TSA lines, especially right now, or fighting that traffic on I-35. With Von Lane, you board in minutes at luxury hotel terminals, and it's 22 big first-class seats, each with Wi-Fi outlets and an onboard attendant bringing snacks, drinks, and, if you're so inclined, beer and cocktails. You'll arrive relaxed and ready for kickoff, the concert, or family time. And with booking open through December, you can also lock in Thanksgiving and Christmas travel right now. Go to vonlane.com, use the code OTF25, that's OTF25, and save $20 on your first ride. Von Lane Elevated Regional Bus Transportation. Gerry, we got a surprise on Thursday night. Charlie Gillick, a tight end out of the state of Michigan at a Central High School in Portage, Michigan, was committed to Minnesota. Texas flips him. We talked during the summer how Texas was going to handle the tight end position. It's been quiet, but Sark and company have been doing work. Gerry, what have you been able to find out in the last really few hours about Charlie Gillick?
Well, they offered him yesterday, and he committed on the spot. And he doesn't even make his official visit till next weekend for the Arkansas game. So no offense, Minnesota fans, but that's not a good sign for you that he just committed on the spot. But again, I'm not making fun. That's just the way it goes. But it's interesting because that tells you how much Texas actually likes him as a prospect, because they went back and forth if they're going to take a tight end in this class, right? And they looked at seniors, and that was the guy that they said, okay, yeah, this guy fits us, and we're going to offer him a scholarship. And that says a lot for me about how good they think he is, the feedback they got from the high school coach there. I mean, because Central High and Portage, Michigan, they don't produce a ton of players. The biggest name player that came out of there is Pete Metzelaars, former NFL tight end, been a longtime tight end coach in the league. It's, he's south of Kalamazoo. It's not an area that gets a lot of foot traffic, but a guy that was committed to UCF as a tight end, then flipped and committed to Minnesota as a linebacker, and now obviously he's committed to Texas as a tight end. So that also speaks to his versatility, though, and his athleticism, because how many guys get to commit to multiple Power 4 schools at different positions and different sides of the ball? That does speak to his athleticism.
CJ, we can say the same about Jet Walker, a guy that we're all familiar with, big-time running back out of Georgetown, highly productive guy, really good athlete. And, CJ, again, running back was a position that when Texas lost out on KJ Edwards and we didn't know how things were going with Derek Cooper, his name got brought up because of the connection to Chad Scott. Texas gets the offer, and CJ, similar to what Gerry was talking about, this staff has done their senior evals, and they ended up landing back on Jet Walker, a guy that in theory – maybe they could have offered during the summer, but they let things play out, and they may be getting their guy.
Yeah, he's a total stud. He is, and Jeff, you've gotten to see him. I've seen him in person, 6'2", 210, 215 right now. I mean, he has as much production as any running back in the state of Texas during his high school career. He averaged north of 10.5 yards per carry as a junior. This guy's a big play waiting to happen. He's a downhill physical running back. He's got size, of course, and I know a lot of folks are wondering, how does that match up with the Derek Cooper? Look, I think you take both and you look at it and say this Texas running back room still has some room to grow, right? There's still some necessary growth in this room. One is in short term, inside running skills. But on top of that, look, Jet Walker could be a potential great special teams weapon for you as well. And I think that's really where Texas sees value early on. Now, of course, he's got to get a campus. He's got to be someone that Texas sees a true fit with. But the offer is telling right now. And I'm a bit surprised, to be honest, that Texas is willing to take a second running back in this class, considering what Derek Cooper has done in this class already. And that was a big pitch for Derek Cooper. But look, if you take a second right down the road, Jet Walker's a heck of a second option for you.
And Gerry,
I think, Jeff, I think one important thing I wanted to add to that is some Texas fans are like, well, how's Derek Cooper going to take the news? My response has been, well, Jarrett Gibson and Ricky Stewart are no longer with the program. So, I mean, it's at some point there's levels to all this, and say, hey, look, Derek, you're our number one guy. You've always been our guy, but we've had two guys leave since the season started, and we have to have depth at this position. So I think it makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. And I think it's easier for a kid that's committed to you and his circle and his agent and everybody to kind of process that out at that point.
Gerry, I'll add to that, and CJ, you can chime in on this if you want to. If you look at the running back depth on this roster, if Trey Wisner ends up going pro, your running back room next year is CJ Baxter, still trying to recover from a major knee injury, James Simon, who we haven't seen get significant carries in a while, and then whatever freshman you bring in, Christian Clark still there also. But the running back picture, Gerry, at Texas in 2026 looks a lot different than it did when Derek Cooper committed to Texas.
Yeah, and you just don't know, look, is a Christian Clark happy with this? Or you just never know nowadays where people are at, because the playing time hasn't increased. It's gone the other way. And in the portal day and age, people are going to be trying to recruit these kids. So out from under you, but it also does look, if Trey Wisner goes pro, obviously, then I think not only would you sign 2 high school running backs, you would be looking in the portal. And I'm not saying portal for the names that the pie in the sky people are looking for, because those aren't really realistic, but a quality back.
Yeah, I think, an option here is one of like the Keelan Robinson-esque role. We'll see. Obviously, Chad Scott has had a history with some of those backs in the past. We'll see if that's an option moving forward as well.
Gerry, I'll add one more thing real quick. When you talk about the portal, and we can talk about it, running back, probably the position we're going to talk about here in a minute, offensive line, you can definitely say this. It's one thing to have an idea of guys you could target and areas you can target in the portal, but you're at the mercy of, one, what's available in the portal, 2, what your money situation looks like with rev share, NIL, and everything else, and then 3, what does that guy think about your current depth chart? Because you got to be knowing Derek Cooper's on the way and whatever else is on the roster. Running back, for instance, you're going to commit to Texas knowing full well what you're getting into. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's a huge piece of it. And then the other part that's going to be so interesting to me, and I don't think anybody knows how all this is going to play out, but it's going to make for fun videos and the portal window, is with the rev share. And obviously Texas will be one of those that finds a way above the rev share. We know the other schools that will. But there's schools that have gone from $3 million in NIL to 13 now with rev share. $3 million a year ago to 13 now. Well, that makes it harder to get guys to jump in the portal if you're recruiting, because look, if a kid likes a school he's at, and those schools have a little more money now, it's not a guarantee they're going to jump in the portal anymore. So I'm very, and I know the agents, the way they play the game, they may want the kid to jump in the portal. Hey, you could always come back through negotiations or whatnot. But I think it's going to be so interesting to see how many guys actually go in the portal this year in the window versus last couple of years, because I do think rev share is going to make it easier for some of these schools to keep kids from jumping in the portal that have always been losing them in the last 2 or 3 years.
CJ, let's go to the offensive line. Caden Sherr, speaking of Georgetown, Jet Walker's teammate at Georgetown, offensive tackle, committed to Stanford. Kyle Flood was at his game last week against Cedar Park, their last regular season game. He's been on the board, got his offer. CJ, your take on Caden Sherr as a prospect?
Well, first, he's got to be a smart kid, right? Committed to Stanford, Texas now involved as well. But look, I see a lot of potential in the growth, right? He's only about 280 pounds at the moment, but you see the length, you see the size, you see the frame and what he could potentially grow into. I don't want to say it's tit for tat with that of Trevor Goosby, but you see a lot of the same physical tools on the outside at offensive tackle. And that, of course, has panned out pretty well for the Longhorns. Caden Sherr, of course, look a little bit new to the Texas recruiting scene, but I think when you turn on the tape and you see him, kind of physically dominate some of these edge rushers at his level, look, I think that's an encouraging sign. Gerry, you can talk a little bit about the numbers game, but to me, Texas wanting to add another tackle, it makes a lot more sense in terms of the evaluation of tackles that Texas has had under Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian. They've hit on quite a bit of those guys.
Yeah, look, I think they'd take 2 more high school linemen if it fell their way. And look, I think Sherr will end up in the class barring some major crazy change. But I think Bryson Martinez, who I saw at East Ascension, who made the unofficial visit a couple of weeks ago, the LSU committee, who's coming back, assuming everything plays out, he's coming back next weekend for an official visit. Texas still trying on Malachi Lee, but we'll see what happens there. But I think Texas would take 2 more high school linemen in this class, a for sure tackle, and then maybe a swing player like a Sherr. So I think that's on the table. They originally wanted 5 high school linemen, and that doesn't mean they won't look in the portal for a left guard or at a guard or 2 guards potentially. I'm not saying I'm not saying the pie in the sky guys. I'm talking about quality players. I'm not saying they won't look in the portal at guard spots either, but I do think if they could get 5 high school linemen in this class, they would, because here's, again, where rev share changes the game, I think, in recruiting. And because you have to really have a strong high school development in the offensive line, because just say you're a third team tackle at a blue blood school, and now throw out Maryland, now has, instead of $3 million, $12 million or $14 million. They can now give you a reason to say, hey, just come start over here, and you're going to make more money now than you would as the third team tackle at a Texas or Ohio State or Georgia. That's going to be one of the real things. Like offensive line, I believe, is the one position that's going to be toughest to have the developmental depth you ideally want to keep, because the rev share is going to give these mid Power 4 schools and low Power 4 schools the ability to go after your third teamers in blue blood and pay them more.
Yeah. And Gerry, on Caden Scherer, real quick, he bucks the trend of the direction we've seen Sark and Kyle Flood go with high school offensive linemen. We know they like big people. And to CJ's point, Trevor Gooseby was 280, 285 when he got to Texas. Scherer doesn't have that kind of length, but Gerry, there's between the foot quickness and the IQ and the versatility, there's a lot to like about him as a prospect.
Yeah, I think the main thing is, when they look at guys like that, what can they get them to? Probably 315, 320, 325 range, right? When they kind of fill out and maximize their frames. So I think that's the way they look like. Looking at Bryson Martinez earlier in the week, I mean, he's 6'6", 307. He looks like he weighs 290, 285, 290. He's kind of got that look about him to where he's going to carry 325, 330 at the college level, whether that's LSU or Texas. And he's going to look like he's 300 pounds. So I think the way they look at these guys is what can they add to that frame? And I think in the case of Scherer, he's got the ability to add a good 25, 30 pounds on this frame.
So, CJ, we've got these 3 guys. They add to, again, playoff games permitting, playoff schedule permitting. The Arkansas weekend, this was the one where the staff was gearing up, CJ, to make this the big visit weekend, and it's certainly shaping up that way at this point.
Yeah, it is. One other name that I wanted to add to it is a potential Tyler Atkinson visit. I was with him Thursday afternoon. He said he's been eyeing a return again. He's been to campus a couple times already, but look, Josiah Villanelle as well, Braylon Hodge, some of these guys. Texas is really loading up on that Arkansas November 22nd weekend, and for good reason, right? You haven't had a great opportunity this year to host some big-time targets. Now against, a rival of yours in Arkansas, it should be a great opportunity, whether it's at 2:36 or 6:30. I know that game is still up in the air, but that's a great opportunity to get a number of big-time targets on campus as Texas pushes one last time outside of the Thanksgiving weekend for a National Signing Day push.
And Gerry, when you look at that Arkansas visitor list, and with the offers we've seen, in the last 24 hours, tight end, running back, offensive line are areas they've attacked. CJ mentioned Josiah Villanelle. We know they've evaluated a lot of guys in the secondary.
Yeah.
Anywhere else, Gerry, you think we could see, and maybe not a name, but a position group pop up between now and the Arkansas game?
Yeah, along with Bill Mel, Teray Davis out of Boulder Fairview. I think Texas would take either one or both of those guys. I think that at the end of this video, we're going to talk about how big this class could get, which is interesting to me, and it may be telling with the portal window opening in a weird way. Look, I'm looking at Drake Quinn as an edge is still supposed to be in unofficially. We'll see if he makes that. I think Ohio State's the team to beat, and Texas is 1B fighting that out against 1A Ohio State. But D-line, I mean, Richard Anderson is a strong maybe, and he's a 5-star dude. He is a dude. For those that love the star rankings, he's your guy. For those that love guys that look like they're going to be in the NFL, he's your guy again. Another LSU commit, and these LSU commits are in a really difficult spot because the people I think around either on the LSU staff that think they may be retained, although how would they know? But people are recruiting like that, which is wild to me. Or people around the collective are trying to tell these kids, even though they're graduating early, hey, don't sign early, just wait. And that's a dangerous game. I mean, that's a very dangerous place to be for kids, because then you're just going on blind faith of who your coach is going to be. So these kids that are committed to LSU, I'll be surprised if they hold on to all of them. I do think they'll hold on to some of them, but you're working on blind faith in one way. They can people can tell you all you want, hey, this guy's going to be your coach, but or I'm going to be here regardless, but they don't really know that. I mean, look, and we'd be saying the same thing if Texas was going through a coaching change and assistants were telling guys, hey, stay committed because I'm still going to be here. They don't know that. I mean, but that's the recruiting game. So like with Richard Anderson, look, he like Bryson Martinez, you almost have to give yourself a backup plan. And I'm not saying Texas is the backup plan. How about another option while you kind of wait this out and see what happens when LSU hires a coach and who that coach may be and what's the timing of that? Because these kids are early high school graduates and they're planning on going to be at the school of their choice in January and starting their NIL clock. And are you really going to just say, no, I'm good. I'm just going to sit back in high school for 4 or 5 more months? It's a tough spot to be in for these kids. Now, some NILs are front loading, by the way. So we're going to be real on this. Yeah,
I think the other thing too, Gerry and CJ, I'll let you get into the class, but even a guy like Caden Sherry committed to Stanford. I think people forget Frank Reich is the interim coach. Stanford doesn't. They've still got a coaching search to go through. So there's it's across the country. The coaching carousel impacts everybody. CJ, I'll give you first dibs. How big do you think this class gets when the dust settles?
I think you're still looking at about 5 or 6 more, right? In the addition of Charlie Gillick last evening. I mean, that came out of nowhere. So the staff continuing to work, right? It's continuing to add and evaluate senior targets. We saw 2 additional offers, both out to the Georgetown kids, Jeff. So, they're really trying to find some late ads. And, you could be looking at, again, 2 more offensive linemen, 2 defensive backs, a defensive lineman in there. Who knows if they're really trying to really push for a Jalen Lott or Jabari Mack, right? There's all sorts of places on this Texas roster right now that they're trying to bolster some numbers for. I think 5 or 6 is the minimum, and who knows how large it could get as you start looking towards some portal departures as we anticipate a good bit this year.
Yeah. And Gerry, to finish out your thoughts on just how big the class might get in the rev share era, in the NIL era, where players have options, coaches have options too. If I'm a guy at a certain position on the depth chart and I see the coaches maybe loading up, that may be a sign that I either need to get it in gear or I may not be long for the Texas program.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, to CJ's point, I think this class could go as high as 29 right now. I mean, if you think about it, if you just play out the numbers, if they get 2 more OLs, you're at 23. If they get Jet Walker running back, they're at 24. Another receiver is 25. Another D lineman's 26. Another edge is 27. And 2 more DBs put you at 29. Yeah. I mean, and that's not counting linebacker. And they do want 1 more linebacker, but I don't know where that's going to come from at this point. So it could get as high as 29. If it gets as high as 29, because I was originally thinking like 26 all year, but if it pushes up to 29, 30 spots in this class, to your point, Jeff, there's going to be some guys that are not going to be back that are maybe planning on being back. But again, with rev share coming in right now, Texas is going to have to make some decisions. All these programs are going to have to make decisions because no matter if you have a certain amount of money outside the rev share and NIL, you're still not going to be spending at the rate you were the last couple of years.
Right.
So these guys have a really difficult task of making all this work. I think they have to make decisions. So I think there's probably a board of guys we absolutely can't lose, guys we don't really want to lose, and guys that, if they get a good offer, we're okay with it. We can replace those guys. I think these guys are going to be tiered. And I just think with rev share coming in, even though there's NIL outside of it, this is going to make these staffs make some really difficult decisions that maybe they hadn't had to make in the last couple of years in terms of as many of those decisions.
Yeah, guys, real quick, how do you think the one portal window, again, we're only down to that one window in January, how much does that change? Do you maybe take an extra high school guy not knowing what's going to be in the portal?
That's a great question, Jeff.
It is. It's going to be chaotic. And Gerry, going back to what you were just saying, you don't know when an offer could come for anybody on the any position, right? So at any moment, you got to be prepared to lose a kid that you weren't expecting, or to be in an NIL fight in which you probably weren't expecting based off of what a deal had been projected to be leading into the upcoming year. So I think you got to find ways in the high school game to find backup options, plans B, C, and D's, just for the instance that you just don't know when an option, a different offer comes to the table, and you're now in a dogfight to retain a kid that you wanted.
All right, CJ, Jerry, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends at Von Lane for sponsoring it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That's OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our recruiting coverage all year round. For Jerry, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.